Every country that seriously tried to replace the US dollar ended up sanctioned, destabilized, or invaded. Iraq, Libya, Iran, Venezuela. A growing number of economists, generals, and former intelligence officers believe this is not a coincidence. This video is about a system so powerful most people have never heard of it. It's called the petrodollar, and this is what happens when you threaten it. To understand why these countries were destroyed, you need to understand what they were threatening. In 1971, Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold. Overnight, the dollar was backed by nothing. If it isn't backed by gold, why would the world keep using it? In 1974, Kissinger flew to Saudi Arabia and made a deal with King Faisal. Saudi Arabia would sell all its oil exclusively in US dollars. Saudi Arabia would invest its oil profits into US Treasury bonds. In exchange, the United States would provide military protection to the Saudi kingdom. It worked. By 1975, virtually all global oil was priced in dollars. Every country that needed oil needed dollars first. Not because of gold, because of oil. This is the petrodollar system, arguably the most powerful mechanism in American geopolitical power for 50 years. Now what happens if you try to opt out? Saddam Hussein was a longtime US ally until he became inconvenient. In the 1980s, Washington used him against Iran. But in 2000, Saddam did something that had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction. He announced Iraq would stop selling oil in dollars. From now on, euros. CNN ran a brief story, then it disappeared. By 2002, Saddam had converted Iraq's $10 billion UN oil reserve fund entirely into euros. On March 19, 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. The official reason? Weapons of mass destruction. The weapons were never found. The Iraqi oil ministry was one of the only buildings US forces were ordered to protect, surrounded by soldiers while everything else burned. Iraqi oil sales switched back to US dollars within weeks. Gaddafi had a bigger plan. He wanted to create a gold-backed African currency, the gold dinar, used by 54 nations to sell their oil outside the dollar system. Libya sat on 143 tons of gold to back it. In February 2011, an uprising began. NATO intervened. The official reason? Protecting civilians. One of Hillary Clinton's released emails stated that Gaddafi's gold was intended to establish a pan-African currency, and that this had directly influenced France's decision to attack Libya. In October 2011, Gaddafi was captured and killed. Libya is now a fractured, failed state. Its oil is sold exclusively in US dollars. Iran has been trying to break from the dollar for 20 years. 20 years of sanctions have followed. In 2008, Iran opened its own oil exchange, letting countries buy Iranian oil in euros, yen, or rials instead of dollars. In 2012, Iran was cut off from SWIFT entirely, the first time SWIFT was ever used as a geopolitical weapon against a sovereign nation. Iran's economy contracted. Inflation surged. The currency collapsed. The official reason? The nuclear program. Whether that was the real reason, a convenient reason, or both, the result was the same. Hugo Chavez was the first leader to openly mock the petrodollar. He sold Venezuelan oil to China for yuan. He brought Venezuela's gold home from New York. He set up oil for goods exchanges across Latin America that deliberately bypassed the dollar entirely. In 2017, Maduro announced Venezuela would price its oil in a basket of currencies, explicitly excluding the dollar. The United States imposed sweeping sanctions, then more sanctions, then sanctions on Venezuela's gold, oil, and central bank. Today, Venezuela is an economic catastrophe. What is not disputed? The United States applied maximum pressure the moment Venezuela tried to leave the dollar system. Step back and look at what we've just seen. Iraq switches to euros. Invaded. Oil switched back to dollars immediately. Libya builds a gold-backed currency. Invaded. Oil back to dollars. Iran builds a non-dollar oil market. Economically strangled. Venezuela de-dollarizes. Collapsed under sanctions. Correlation is not causation. Iraq had other problems. Libya's uprising was real. Iran's nuclear program was real. But the people making this argument aren't conspiracy bloggers. They include former intelligence officers, central bank economists, and US generals on the record. You can decide what to do with that. The countries currently trying to move away from the dollar are not small. China and Russia now trade mostly in yuan and rubles, bypassing SWIFT. India buys Russian oil in rupees. Brazil signed yuan settlement deals with China in 2023. Saudi Arabia, the original petrodollar partner, has started accepting yuan for Chinese oil purchases. The dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from 71% in 2000 to roughly 57% today. Trump threatened BRICS with 100% tariffs. Lula immediately dropped the common currency idea. Putin said Russia wasn't moving away from the dollar. Even the challengers backed down under pressure. Iraq, invaded. Libya, invaded. Iran, strangled. Venezuela, collapsed. And now the same conversation is happening between nuclear powers. The petrodollar was built in 1974 to solve one problem. How do you maintain global demand for a currency no longer backed by gold? The answer was oil. It was elegant. It worked. But that answer is now 50 years old. Alternative payment systems exist. BRICS is building its own infrastructure. Cracks are showing. The petrodollar didn't die in 2024 when the Saudi agreement lapsed. But something is ending. The question no one can answer is what comes next, and whether the transition will be as violent as history suggests it might be.